Let me just start off with the news we've been hearing this evening about China's President Xi speaking to President Zelensky. Now, clearly, we know President Xi came up with this so-called peace plan. That was pretty roundly dismissed a week or so. But a week or so ago, but it does seem as though these two leaders have been having some serious conversations.
Yeah, and that's got to be a good thing because jaw is always better than war. But the the fundamental problem still pertains that the 12-point Chinese peace plan, which they either cynically or cleverly put out on the first anniversary on the 24th of February, doesn't fulfill the remit of a better peace because war is fought for political objectives and for a better peace, and it doesn't deliver that, nor does it deliver a just peace for Ukraine. So the notion that China is neutral is not proven at the moment. So it's a good thing, but we have to take it with a pinch of salt because ultimately some of the Chinese objectives are the same as the Russians. For example, to split Europe away from the US. And there's always going to be useful idiots out there who will take the line, which, of course, Kaya Kalla, the Estonian Prime Minister, has said a number of times, quoting Gromyko in terms of negotiating strategies. For example, demand the maximum, something you didn't have before. Secondly, prevent ultimatums or threaten people. It's nuclear escalation and things like that. And thirdly, the Russians don't give an inch in negotiations because there will be always people in the West who will want to give you things.
Yeah.
So it's a start, but it's only a start. There's a long road to go before we get to anything there. And the Russians didn't claim or say anywhere in their peace plan that Russia was the aggressor. They didn't condemn Russia, neither did they ask Russia to leave because the war would end tomorrow if Russia upped sticks and went back to its sovereign territory. Currently, it's invading the sovereign territory of Ukraine.
Yeah, and of course, President Zelensky has said throughout that there can be no question of peace, which leaves Russia in control of large chunks of his country. We've also had these reports of Russian jets seen in the Baltics. Just bring us up to date with what we know about this.
Well, this is actually fairly normal activity, so I wouldn't get too overboard about this. So, NATO air policing has been a constant presence and a mission 24/7, 365 days of the year since 1961. And it is controlled by a combined air operations center, certainly the one in the north from Germany. And if Russian planes look like they're going to be coming into airspace violations of NATO airspace, or that there's suspicious activity or unsafe air traffic, then they control quick reaction alert aircraft, which go up and intercept them. That is fairly routine activity. I don't think we should go overboard. Neither is it going to lead to a shooting match. That's not to say that shooting matches haven't happened before without leading to any escalation. For example, we know in both 2014 and 2015, Turkey, using American F-16s, did shoot down both Syrian planes in 2014 and a Russian plane in 2015 when it violated their sovereign airspace, and it's allowed to do that without the Russians going to war. The Russians did say at the time it would lead to severe consequences, and we've heard that a number of times over the last year from them in other aspects of the war.
So we've got those manoeuvres going on. We've got Zelensky talking to President Xi. And when it comes to the war in Ukraine, I mean, we seem to have been at almost a stalemate for weeks, if not months now, and a lot of talk of a new offensive imminent, either from the Russians or from the Ukrainians, or from both. What do you read about the situation as it is on the ground at the moment?
Well, in military terms, we would say that the Russians have probably culminated. That is, that their offensive power is almost exhausted and they can go no further. And they'll shortly have to be going into a defensive posture. And that's been some of the sort of messaging, for example, by Prigozhin. Now, I don't think the Ukrainians are in a position yet to go on the offensive. One of the reasons for that is, of course, the Rasputitsa, the mud of spring, is still there at the moment. So you're probably not likely to see anything until at least May. But what you can say is that they're doing what we call shaping operations at the moment. So they're going after various assets, Russian assets, to try and make it easier for them to go onto the offensive. One of those, for example, is going after Russian electronic warfare assets, because at the moment the half-life of UAVs, unmanned aerial systems, drones effectively, is very short because their signals are being jammed. If you can take a lot of that out, giving yourself another type of air cover helps you to move in the land war. And that's what they need to do to be successful. I think it's also important that, for example, some of the civilian companies we've heard about today have started to full access to My Maps and other what we call OSINT, which is open source intelligence. Now, that is to, again, make sure that there is operational security on behalf of the Ukrainians. So that's also significant. And in a way, we've seen quite a lot of commercialization of the battlefield, with a lot of civilian companies helping in terms of artificial intelligence or other intelligence provision, which has helped the Ukrainian targeting. So there's quite a lot going on there. But ultimately, we want the Ukrainians to be in a position where they will mystify, mislead, and surprise the Russians. So no one's going to say too much about what and where they think the main effort from the Ukrainians will occur.
And we know that Ukraine has been asking, of course, for fighter jets, but also for tanks, for more weapons, for more ammunition. A lot of different pledges have been made. How much of the vital equipment and hardware which those Ukrainian forces really need if they are going to start this offensive when the ground and the weather improves, how much of that has reached those Ukrainian frontline troops? Because we were hearing a lot of concerns about a real lag between pledges being made and the kit actually being delivered.
Well, it's a great question, because again, that caveats the sustainability and how far the Ukrainians could go without culminating. What you can say in raw numbers, because this came out of the contact group, the 11th contact group in Ramstein this week, is that 230 tanks have been delivered, 1,550 armored vehicles have been delivered. The American Abrams tanks won't be there until the autumn. But again, it's the training throughput as well, because it was interesting that the SecDef of America, for example, said there are 25,000 Ukrainians currently training in Germany on combined arms maneuver. 8,000 have completed it. So it's not necessarily this is going to be a one-shot operation. That may mean that the offensive will be delayed, but it gives you more bang for your buck later on if you've still got that volume of people being trained with additional supplies to come, which the Ukrainians could use later in the year. So an offensive doesn't have to be a one-shot weapon, and it can be sequenced in time based on what's happening with the provision of ammunition and equipment.